This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
Today's podcast is part of our Game Plan for Your Next Job series, and joining me again is someone we've had on in the past, Coach Bill Vasko, who is the head softball coach at Frostburg, and he also runs a service called XO Coach and coachingportfolio.com. He's joining us today to talk about the importance of having a portfolio and how you might design that, some things you want to put into it, and Coach, we appreciate you coming back here and sharing all these ideas with us today.
Well, thanks for having me on, Keith. You know, I enjoy speaking to you, not just on the podcast, but personally as well. And I feel very honored to be a guest again and be able to share some knowledge that will hopefully be able to help some coaches out there as they start to go through the job search process again.
Well, the last time you shared some very valuable information, and I still think it's very pertinent today, but since then, which I believe was about 3 years ago, things have changed in our world. And we're definitely looking at something, a world that's much more digital, that's virtual. I know, thinking back to my days as a college coach, we did a lot of the interviews. We would start on the phone, but pretty quickly then we determine after those phone interviews who's coming to campus and who's interviewing. And I know a lot of that now takes place probably until the final rounds virtually. So things like the portfolio, I think, start to take a much more valuable place in this process, especially because when you look at the live events and the networking events, you know, we still get on Zoom and we have our clinics and those kinds of things, but it's not the back and forth. It's not meeting somebody personally like you would before. So now you have to find a different way to tell your story and get that to people. And at least in what I think, and you know, I would love for you to talk about this, but the portfolio now definitely takes a different place in this whole process and probably is a more valuable tool than it was in the past.
Yeah, and you know, it's ironic. This past summer, I had to fill two positions myself, a full-time assistant and a grad assistant position, and you know, we obviously went through the traditional posting of the position and everything. And I had kind of had some people in mind through networking avenues for myself, through people I knew. And it was interesting that for the most part, you know, I did bring both candidates that when I filled the position to campus, but it was kind of, we'd already solidified the deal before they even came to campus because, you know, they sent over their resume. And the first thing I did as soon as somebody was interested that I liked was we set up a Zoom chat to talk as soon as possible, have a brief introduction, and then do a final round of Zoom interviews with the finalists for each position. You know, like I said, we brought them to campus only after we had kind of said, hey, you know, you're a good fit, you're my top person, and they were super interested, and coming to campus was more just to finalize the deal than to bring finalists to campus. And the turnaround was really quick. I mean, you know, that was the nice part. You didn't have to wait to set up all of these hotels, flights, cars, whatever it is to get people to campus just to get to the finalist round. Like we're able to fill the positions really quick. You know, in terms of the portfolios, it's crazy, you know, because, you know, we have some sample portfolios on coachingportfolio.com that can act as a reference guide. And we have some of the very original portfolios that were submitted as samples back about 2010, you know, nearly 12 years ago. And you and I had talked off air about, you know, the kind of plain Microsoft Word portfolios that are black and white and have some bullet points and are pretty basic, you know, and it's a good start there. But, you know, portfolios have really changed over the years. I mean, shoot, I can even remember my very first portfolio in 1997 was the old school 3-ring binder where I had just kind of taken some documents and 3-hole punched them and put them in a binder and either delivered them by mail or hand delivered them back in the day. And, I still tell coaches it's nice to have a hard copy, a spiral bound one, something nice that you can take to the interview to pass out to people if you're interviewing with a committee, so they have something that they can look over before, they sit down and chat with you. But in terms of the digital age, there are so many opportunities and ways that you can create portfolios now, be a little more creative, which I think is awesome, because one of the things that I talked about for coaches, the importance of creating portfolio is to be able to display your level of professionalism and your level of creativity, those abilities for you to do those things and have the know-how in how to use those different technologies, and with not only just, word processor type technologies. Now we're talking about all kinds of digital technologies through your phone, through the computer, through different types of media that you can utilize to kind of show who you are as a coach and add those things to your portfolio. I mean, you can have a digital portfolio right now that you can send out that can include video clips of you in practice running drills and those kind of things. So it's really crazy the kind of things that you can do and the things that we're seeing. And, even though it's super important to be creative and take advantage of these technologies that are available, the number one thing is you still have to be able to tell your story of what you accomplished and what you achieved in the programs that you've been in. How did you help them improve, and what type of value can you bring to your next employer? If you are using all these fancy technologies, but you're not telling the story of how you can help your next program improve, you're not really accomplishing what having an outstanding resume or a portfolio or a website where you kind of maybe share all of your information. If you're not good at telling your story and how you can improve somebody else's program, then it doesn't matter how good you are at using all that technology.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it is about maximizing the technology, I believe. But the thing you said that's important is sharing your story, sharing who you are and how you do things. And you mentioned something in there that I think is very important, is that idea of being able to show people who you are out on the practice field, right? I mean, people could see you on game day, but the real coaching, we all know, game days, adjustments and, things here and there. But I mean, the real part, the real classroom is out on the field. And so I've always encouraged coaches to, for a number of reasons, to record yourself or have a student manager or an injured player or somebody hold your phone out there and record you coaching. Number one, for your own personal development and seeing what are the things you do well, what language are you using, where can you do things better, even being able to share that with somebody who could serve as a mentor and give you some pointers on that. But ultimately, though, at some point you're going to be going for a new job, and now all this content that you've captured of you coaching becomes an important part of telling your story, that you can show like, hey, here's where I am coaching, right? Whether you put this together on a website or, something digitally that you pass along, the days of the black and white, as you said, run stuff through a copier, put a nice cover on it, send a bunch of those to the interview committee. You got to think about how can you use some of this and really paint the picture of who you are. And so your thoughts on that, Coach, and some of the best things, I guess, that you've seen coaches do to give that picture of this is who I am out on the field and, in my quote unquote classroom.
It's funny because, I talk about, especially when I'm reviewing resumes, which is part of our services in one of our premium packages, is that, just looking at the resume, I tell coaches they have to be much better at documenting how they brought value to a program and how they improved the program and what exactly were the steps that they took to make those achievements and accomplishments. Because most coaches, I was guilty of it for years. I listed general duties, responsibilities, and then I tried to expand in the portfolio beyond those things. But you got to have a little more information on the resume to kind of spark an interest to have somebody go and take a look at your portfolio next, which is where you really, include all the great stuff and really break things down. This last year, our team ended up great achievement, number one team GPA for the school year in all of Division II softball. And, it was a great honor. And I had a ton of people ask us, well, how did you accomplish it? What are you doing that's different? And, I really thought, fortunately, I've been lucky that I got some really smart kids who take the academics serious, and I don't have to look over their shoulder, that they take that part seriously enough that I don't have to do a lot. But, I started really thinking about, if I'm going to list on my resume that we had the number one GPA in all of Division II softball, that looks great on my resume, but at some point, either on the resume or in the portfolio, I've got to discuss, what were the things that we did to achieve that. And there were some things on our staff that we do, and, I'm sure a lot of staff do some of those things, and maybe some things were a little bit differently, but, now I've got to sit down and, if I decide to look for another position at some point and tell that story of how did we do that, break that down in my portfolio and get into a little more detail and show the tools that we utilize, some of the software services that we use with our kids that may be a little bit unique, because we have study tables, but we do them ourselves. We don't have a department-wide thing that we utilize for those kind of things. So, I've got to sit down and actually show, because, I met with some people on campus who are like, tell us more about how you achieve this. And I'm like, well, got smart kids. I recruit smart kids. They know what the expectations are, and we did it. But, there was a little more detail in that. So I tell coaches, list your achievements on your resume, give a little detail of what that was involved, and then take the things on your resume and put those in your portfolio and expand upon, how you brought value to that program and how you'll continue to bring value to the next program when you're being interviewed. And, with we talked a little bit, my last job interview was about 4 years ago, and I used PowerPoint. I used some graphics, some digital things in that portfolio that were a little bit new for me. And now I look back at that portfolio 4 years ago, and it's outdated because the graphics were pretty basic. So, being able to utilize some different types of software and things, I think PowerPoint is still a powerful tool. There's a big learning curve on really how to utilize it. I've met with a couple of other coaches who are using PowerPoints for their playbooks, and we started to utilize that with our program. I know, most people don't think about softball utilizing playbook, but we have a 150-page playbook of all the things that we utilize in our program on and off the field, and we use PowerPoint for most of that. So that's a really powerful tool. I like to use a program called Canva, which is free. It does have a pro version. We do all of our social media graphics on there, graphics for portfolios, things that I do for my websites. It's amazing, and there's a lot of things I'm learning. My former assistant did a lot of our social media stuff and was spending hours trying to remove backgrounds on photos through Photoshop. And Canva, you can do it in 10 seconds with a press of a button. So it's pretty amazing, the things that are out there. And I know the younger generation is learning these things at a much earlier age and becoming a lot more proficient at those kind of things. But to really just sit down and kind of go through and seeing what's out there and sharing what other people are doing is really important. One of the things, I know I'm rambling on here a little bit, that's been most frustrating for me, when I first started the coaching portfolio, we had a lot of coaches who were really excited about using their portfolio as a sample to help out other coaches. And that's always been one of the best things about the profession. I think now that we're getting a lot more information and creativity out there, a lot more people are guarded about sharing what they have because they don't want other people to steal it. So that's a little bit unfortunate. So you got to do a little more legwork to kind of see what's out there. But it's really awesome to see what other coaches are doing and how they're utilizing that. So I'm not sure I completely answered what your original question was, but, I wanted to use that example of, when you have an achievement, which is really great, and you list that on your resume, you got to really sit down and think about, okay, what were all the steps that we did, or what are the things that we're doing in our program that help us to accomplish that? And how can I send that message out to a future employer when I'm, preparing to interview for them, whether it's through my resume, through the interview, but especially through the portfolio, which is a visual component of the job search process where you can share your message.
That's exactly it. No, you did answer my question, and I think brought up the most important point is not just that accomplishment, but then how do you do that? And sometimes, you have to think that through because you know how it's done. But again, you're presenting this to It could be a number of different people. It could be coaches of other sports. There might be somebody on the committee who is a football person, in our case, or it might be all administrators. So you need to think about the audience that you don't want to take for granted that, yes, you know that, but what will translate for them. So an example I have that I think is tangible to exactly what you were talking about is, I'm thinking of a portfolio I looked at of a coach who was a defensive coordinator. And, he kind of went through this progression in his deck or his portfolio, where the first thing he talked about was the importance of takeaways in the game. And now that's a universal truth. We know that to be true. We can go find that information on the internet or Pro Football Focus. What is the turnover differential going to mean to a game? And so that was a big part of his philosophy. And he talked about, the takeaways, and shared on a really just clean page some graphics that really highlighted, wow, takeaways are important. So if I'm sitting there on the committee, I'm saying, well, this obviously is an important thing for defense, right? Or if it's for, not a head coaching job, that head coach certainly is going to pay attention to that. And then from there, he went into his philosophy behind then how they're going to share that with their players, the things that they're going to do to teach that, to drill it. And then finally, he shared, okay, here's the big concept of turnovers or takeaways and why they're important. Here's my philosophy and how we teach it. Here's the results of what we did in our program because of it. Now, and it takes you, again, telling these little stories of, this is what I believe, here's how I do it. Here was the results of how we did it, right? So instead of just saying we were number one in our league in turnovers, taking it that way and really building it out to tell more of that story and have yourself stand out as, okay, I know when I bring this guy in, this is going to be a focus for him. And you know what? That's important to us.
Right. No, I totally agree. And, the two key things there you pointed out, being able to share that and show that, but also understanding who your audience is. For example, if you're interviewing, like you said, for defensive coordinator position, where you're going to be meeting with the head football coach and other assistants on that particular staff, like that's the information you want to convey. You're applying for a head coaching position at a smaller college, and the committee is going to be made up of coaches in other sports who may not have any idea what a takeaway even is. Like, that's not necessarily going to be the entire focus of your portfolio. Like, you want to have a section with that information in there, but the things that, if you're still going to hand out a hard copy of a portfolio when you're on campus for an interview, like, you're going to want to have copies of portfolios that are not as focused on football and more on how you're going to build the program, how you're going to build academic success, how are you going to incorporate community involvement, how are you going to fundraise, and those kind of things. Like, you got to do some research and know your audience for the particular position that you're going to interview in. And you've got to have maybe multiple versions of your portfolio available. When we talk about different ways that you can present the information, I've really pushed coaches to have, different versions, digital versions that they can save as PDFs to be able to send out to different people on the committees. And then, in my opinion, a website version of your portfolio is still one of the best ways that you can present the information in a way where, depending upon who the audience is, they can select which information they want to take a look at. And not only is that a good way to present your information in a portfolio type of version, but you're showing that you can use web-based applications as well. But it's a branding tool as well. And we know that as sports have become a bigger business right now, and not just what you do on the field, sometimes in some ancillary type of things that are involved with the business side of coaching and athletics right now, you want to be able to show that you can develop a brand, not just for yourself, but for your program and your school or whatever organization you may be a part of. So when we talk about ways digitally that you can do things, I still think becoming very proficient in web design is super important. And web design is much different now than what it was 25 to 30 years ago when I first got involved and took my first class on how to develop a website. I mean, you can have a website up and running within an hour if you want to do that. But, some coaches, despite, everything that we have available to us today, just aren't very technology proficient. And I think that's super important, especially as software becomes a bigger part of everything that we're doing. in the coaching world today, like learning how to utilize all those kind of things is going to be a big benefit to you in being able to be hireable.
No question. And again, thinking of the situations we're in, and sometimes you want to make sure that if you are sending something along, that it is distributed. And I know for me, it worked different ways. Initially, we make sure that if I was sending something along to an athletic director, and thinking back to my high school days, that I would also send along a letter and knowing that, okay, the principal is going to be involved, or here's some of the other people, as much as I knew, to try to send along a copy to those people as well. And, I think I shared this in the last podcast. I mean, I had moved to trying to be creative and tell my story and use pictures and examples and do it differently than, the black and white bullets and paragraphs, etc., a long time ago. But I'm thinking of even the advancements we've had because of COVID and shutdowns and people going paperless at restaurants. The QR code, that used to be something that a lot of people really didn't know what they were, how to use them. You used to have to have an app that you downloaded, both to create those as well as to read those. And now, the smartphone, you just open your camera and point it at, you go to a restaurant, point it at the menu, boom, it's there. The TV's on, there's a lot of QR codes on TV. You can point it at that and get them there. Well, to me, if you are still sending along paper versions of this, which I think is still a part of this, to think about, well, how can I make this come alive? There is no play button on paper, but now when I can put a QR code on here and maybe a caption that says, see me coaching in practice, or see me working this particular drill, or see me running this meeting, people in that interview committee would be interested in those types of things. So I think you need to think about how you can incorporate that as well. And as I said, the last couple of years have jumped people ahead in major ways with the use of technology.
Yeah, one of the ways I like to think about it is that, the job search process, or even if you're not in the market for a job, this personal branding of yourself and who you are as a coach, it comes in a lot of different layers. So, for example, I see a lot of guys on Twitter right now kind of sharing some of the graphics that they've designed that they plan on handing out at convention coming up, which is really great because, these are really sharp looking, flyers that they've got ready to go to hand out, not your typical resume or business card or anything. And it has, I think you mentioned off there, like a timeline of where they've been with logos and everything. That's a great introductory piece. Well, what's the next layer? Like you said, maybe it's a QR code, or they have a link on the page that then takes you to a little more detailed history of where they've been and what they've done, duties and responsibilities, accomplishments and achievements. Well, then from there, you've got to have another layer that's a little more detailed in terms of a portfolio that shows exactly how you accomplished all of those things. And then you got to have another layer that includes all of your social media or just media in general. Like you mentioned, video clips, whether it's a YouTube channel or a huddle, or right in your portfolio, you've got video clips that they can access, show you, on the practice field, running drills and everything, or showing things that your athletes are doing in the weight room. I mean, I'm telling you right now, a big part of my clientele that's really growing is strength and conditioning coaches, figuring out how can I separate myself as a candidate, as a strength and conditioning coach, beyond just showing what I do programming wise. How can I build a portfolio that really demonstrates all the other things I can do? So there's all of these different layers that kind of just build upon each other to show what you can do as a coach, and being able to present that in a really meaningful way to people out there. And again, it doesn't just start when you're looking for a job. It starts, people are looking right now because, I make mental notes. I'm like, man, that's somebody I would really like to hire right now based upon the things that they're showing me just on social media right now. I want to learn more. How can I learn more? Can I go to a website to see more? Can I check out a portfolio that shows, their progression on a drill series? That's one of the big things that's become important to me is progressions in everything that we do. Well, if somebody pops up a drill on social media, I'm like, I love that drill. And they keep posting more drills. I mean, I like everything that they're doing. Well, can they show me how they do a progression of all of these things instead of showing me random drills? So there's got to be some layers to everything that you're doing and presenting that in a meaningful way and building upon everything that you're doing.
Definitely. The technology side of things has given us the ability to really make what used to be black and white on paper come alive. And another area I think is important on touching on, we've all had the list of references, either in our portfolio or attached to our resume and what we were submitting then. And again, thinking of what you're able to do with some of the technology today, starting with something very simple like having a page and talking about what players say about Coach Grabowski or what other coaches are saying about Coach Grabowski, and getting that, maybe a picture of that particular person, so it brings them to life. It gives a visual for the person reading it along with those words. But again, could you do it on video? Could you have it with both, right? Those words and then a little QR code that, again, with a smartphone makes that come alive. And there's that person sharing that very short clip about, what that coach means to them or what they've seen that coach do. Maybe it's an opponent of yours or one of your mentors or somebody that you work with. Getting that kind of information out, again, starts to tell your story and makes you somebody who isn't just somebody black and white on paper, but now you're starting to jump off that page and really sharing a lot of information in short amounts. And you mentioned the video, right? And I think you and I were talking about social media before and all the different things, and you definitely want to pay attention to length. I mean, there's a reason when you look at all the different social media platforms, I think maybe, and I don't know for sure, TikTok is either 3 minutes or 3:30 is the longest that you're going to see. I think Twitter is 2 minutes and 20 seconds. And there's a reason for that in people's attention span. So, you do want to be able to tell those things quickly. We live in that world today, that, 170 or 180, whatever it's up to now, character world, things in bite-sized pieces, and you have to communicate in those ways too. But there's a lot you can do within those 2 minutes or so of a video to really communicate what's important to you and who you are.
Yeah, and I think that's where the younger generation really has an upper hand in, being able to take advantage of the technology and build their brand. Is that, for me, building a relationship with a player might be, having them stop by my office and sit down and we just have a general conversation and chat, whether it's about softball or classes or just how their family's doing and everything, where, these kids today can pull out their phone and do a little back and forth on something, whether it's on TikTok or some other social media thing, just recording it on video even. Like you said, having a conversation with, well, what's important to you about softball? Why do you like being at Frostburg? How are things going? Tell us a little bit something interesting about yourself. And we post those things on social media, but I tell, our assistants who are both young right now that, those are things that they should be cataloging, not just for our social media account, but for their professional portfolio to show, hey, here's how I'm utilizing social media within our program, and don't be afraid of including themselves in those kind of things, because it shows how you develop relationships with your players. It shows your interpersonal skills, social interactions, in addition to being able to utilize the platform and the technology as well. So they've got an advantage in that, because that's not something I'm always super comfortable with. I know that when I'm appearing on a TikTok or an Instagram story for our social media account with our program, it's going to be something funny, because I'm going to ham it up a little bit. It's not going to be something I probably want to include in my portfolio per se, but I talk about with our assistants all the time, like, when you're doing these things, we're doing it to help the program, but my positions are short-term positions where they're going to be moving on at some point, and I expect that out of them. You need to make sure you're taking advantage of when you do these things, thoughtfully think about, how can I incorporate this into my branding and into my portfolio so that I can show what I can do at another program and help them out as well.
Yeah, and obviously you still want to be yourself. I mean, just like in coaching, you just because you're getting on a certain social media platform that really has, a certain type of content on it, I mean, it's still about being yourself. And, you could push things a little bit, but I always find it silly when I see, somebody trying to do whatever the trend might be, and you're like, man, that's not you. I know you. That's not really you. But and some of it is trying those things out and pushing it. But the most important thing is that whatever you use, whether this is putting it on paper, putting on video, putting on a social media platform, whatever. What really needs to shine through is you and who you really are. Be yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that as well. I think we can, as coaches in general, can pretty quickly point out some of the imposters out there on social media who are doing it more for the clicks or the clout that the young kids talk about these days. So it's utilizing it for the proper purpose and not just for, sometimes I don't always like to say personal branding, because when I say that, I think about like, wow, I'm promoting myself, and sometimes promotion can take a turn for the worse. But I mean, you do have to promote yourself. Like, you can't just sit back and hope that the jobs are going to come to you, or, that you're going to accomplish what you want to accomplish as a coach and reach to the level that you want to reach by just kind of sitting back and hoping that it happens. I mean, there are instances, somebody's going to pick up the phone and call you because of something that you've done, but you do have to do some self-promotion as well, but it's got to be done in the right way.
Coach, as we want things down here, the other part we've talked a lot is about the creativity. And I know for you, you like to be able to see different portfolios, and you do have a service, but you're always looking for some new ideas as well. So what can coaches do, I guess, to be able to show you some things, and what are you willing to do for them maybe to share some of that information with you?
The Coaching Portfolio Guide, which is at coachingportfolio.com, started when, I used to run a different website where coaches shared a lot of information, and coaches just post their portfolios as examples for other coaches to see. And I realized, through that little thread that we had going at the time, it had over 10,000 views in a year. And I was like, there's obviously a lot of need for information for coaches on how to develop a portfolio. I know even when I run polls now, some coaches will be like, I don't even know what a portfolio is, let alone how to build one. So the service that we offer, we share a lot of examples of documents and portfolios for coaches to see what other coaches have done, to kind of spur some ideas on how to develop their own portfolio, what types of things should be included in a portfolio, how to display that information. It's one of the things, I offer a service. In my opinion, it's not real expensive. I'm always willing to, for free, to look over anything that somebody's already put together, a portfolio, and give them some feedback. But, part of what we do is share that information for coaches to help develop their own portfolio. We're always looking for sample portfolios to add. We service coaches in all sports, not just football, even though football is one of our biggest clientele. So a lot of the samples we have are football coaches. But, if anybody ever has a portfolio that they would like to share, especially if it's something creative, because, some of the original portfolios that we have in the portfolio guide are some of the older, as I mentioned, 10 years old, black and white versions. So if you have something that's a little more creative and stands out and you're willing to share and you're not worried about other coaches taking a look at that, I'm always willing to exchange services to give people access for free to the guide or other services that I can help provide them. I do resume reviews. I do consults through Zoom and everything. So, if it's a lot more difficult, like I said, coaches, as they become more creative, not willing to share what they have. But if coaches are willing to share with me what they have, I'm willing to exchange some services to help them out as well.
And again, Coach, the best way to connect with you?
The primary service, that we offer through the portfolio guide is www.coachingportfolio.com. I'm on social media all over the place. Most of my social media accounts are either my personal ones, Bill Vasko, which I don't interact as much on those. So it's usually just at Bill Vasko, BILLVASKO. But the main umbrella of all of my services that I offer for career development for coaches and some of my other side businesses is XOCoach, xocoach.com. And that's what most of my handles on social media are. Usually it's XO_coach. That's on Twitter, Instagram. We are on TikTok now at Coaching Portfolio. I just created my first TikTok a couple of nights ago, so check it out. I'm trying to branch into that and working on, right now my YouTube channel is Bill Vasko, but I'm working on creating a new channel and trying to get some content there at some point. Right now it's pretty blank, but so we're trying to be out there in a variety of ways and just interact with coaches and give some tips and stuff on all our social media accounts about, resumes, interviews, searching for jobs, developing your portfolio. And obviously that kind of leads to coachingportfolio.com, where you can find the Coaching Portfolio Guide that is not only about building portfolios, but also has a lot of information in there from myself and other coaches who, provide job services for coaches in terms of resume tips, interviewing, all of those different kind of things.
Well, Coach, I really appreciate your time today, and best of luck to you and your season, which you're going to be kicking off here once the new semester gets started. And again, thank you for all the information and everything you do to help coaches.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on, and I enjoyed our time together and being able to share the info with other coaches. Thanks, Keith.